There is no meaning in a text. No. All we have is text. If you're talking about God and divine speech and that logos and that the logoi, if you're talking about that, then yes. But this is not what we're talking about when we're talking about the current spoken language. It's maybe what I'm talking about when I talk about pure phenomenology and divine speech and speech as pure act. When you are holy and then what you speak is reality, yeah, but then you are fully incarnating the logos. There is no meaning in a text. No. I think Catholics want to root it largely in the magisterium, except for the Catholic mystics. And rooting it in the magisterium is the same problem as rooting it in the text. It's just a different text. It's just the magisterial text. You still have the same problem. What does it mean? No text can tell you what something means. Because then you're in the problem of information. You're in the problem of objectivism, substance ontology. But you're not seeing that the relation is fundamental. A text without context is meaningless. You need context. Context with text. What comes with the text? Can a scientific study have meaning? Which study? Who says? Because then you're getting into the authority problem. You're always going to have an appeal to authority, but what is the authority? The authority is a person. It's all rooting meaning in a text. It's trying to, but you can't, because then you have endless debates about interpretation, which is the postmodern critique of that approach. And so this is why I say all meaning is absolute and relational and personal. But then people will treat the propositional affirmation of relational ontology in an adverbial way as if it's substance ontology. What does it mean? What does it mean? And then therefore, how should you act in the world if relational ontology is true? And that means that everything is contextual. It means that everything is relative. Not arbitrary, but everything is relative. Everything isn't arbitrary because we have embodied relations to things. Like the Catholic Church would say that they outsource meaning to the church, which is implying a relational ontology. But then when you root that in like a static magisterium, you're getting into the same problem. You're treating the text as ultimate, and the text isn't ultimate, and it's just an infinite regress. So is it the Bible that's ultimate? No, it's the magisterial interpretation of the text. Well, is that static, or is that an ongoing Talmudic, midrash, faithful innovation thing? Because the faithful innovation is the spiral, where you are being faithful to a mystical center that you are constantly circling in a telodic orientation. So that's why things aren't arbitrary, because it's the spiral, but you're circling a mystical center that God is he that lies forever just beyond the limits of what we already seem to know, Clem Snide. And so you're constantly circling that God is he about whom we must never speak, and we must always keep speaking. Those are all saying the same thing. It's faithful innovation. It is fidelity to what has come before, while also acknowledging change and innovation and new and further up and further in. That's how you can have both. And tradition, I would argue, is a body. It's a body of, like the Talmud's a body. The Talmud is a body of the interpretation of the Torah, but it's ongoing. That is exactly how Christians should react to the Bible and the New Testament, the Old Testament and the New Testament together. They should have the same relationship to it. And I think that's what I've been told. That's what the Orthodox Church does. The interpretive authority has to be a body, which is the tradition of the church. So the Orthodox Church will talk about ecumenical councils, because you need ecumenical councils. You need the whole body to be together to be authoritative of this faithful innovation and embodied throughout time interpretation of the text, and to speak with this apostolic authority. The problem is they can't ever agree enough to get together and have meetings, and that's that's not great. But what do you do about it? For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also have the first fruits of the Spirit. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. For we were saved in this hope.
We're trying to figure out, what do we do with this multiplicity of personal experience? And this is what Newman came to. He came to this idea that there are many possible apprehensions that are proper to a single entity.
What he's saying is there's a many-to-many to correspondence versus a one-to-one. Words mean many things.
The meaning of the intonation of an utterance makes all the difference. I mean, for example, yes, yes, or yes, you know, oh man, all is one, yes. Well, it is. It is actually yes, you know, and I say yes, and all is many. Now what? Yes, I do argue that. Yes, 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 yes.
And I'm not just speaking about pharmacological interventions. I'm also just saying meditative practices and so on.
Yes.
And it's beautiful, almost like poetry.
Well, that's the only kind of language that can deal with this. Yes. Yes, yes. It's about dispositions, not about propositions. But, yes, yes.
As if
yes
said one thing, or there's only one interpretation of that.
Yes, indeed. You need to be careful. So
Interesting.
What I'm really saying is, yes, I agree. Yes. I'm with you. Yes. Yes.
What does it mean? It's unendingly fecund and pregnant with meaning. All meaning is absolute and relational and personal. So it's not something that it's not in your prefrontal cortex, it's not in your left brain, it's not something that you can name and look at and point to, but it's in there. It's the fullness of your consciousness, which includes your pre-conscious awareness. You need context. Context with text. What comes with the text? Yosef talks about this. It's in the Torah.
Since a reality is what is intelligible to any person, everything real has latent in itself an endless store of real apprehensions that people may learn to know.
Okay, I'm going to go back and play that. Okay, first, what I'm doing, I'm going to put this on X so that people can watch on X. Okay, also, should I get an X Premium account so that I can also have another social media place where I'm YouTubing in case YouTube decides to be totalitarian and shut up my poor voice? I'm a victim. It's so sad. Okay. I'm gonna go back and play what he just said again, but it's what is real, what he just said. Let's play it again. Jeez, it's so good.
Since a reality is what is intelligible to any person.
Okay, let's write this out. Since a reality is what is intelligible to any person. Okay, it's what's there. This is George MacDonald's Lilith quote that I love. It's just like, you know, I'm sorry I cannot explain the thing to you. I but barely apprehensions. I but barely apprehend it myself. And the fact is, there's nothing in you, deep calling to deep. There's no context. You have nothing, you have no memory resonant in you for apprehending this. You haven't learned it yet. But it's there. It doesn't mean it's not there. You just can't apprehend it. But reality is what is intelligible, able to be intelligent to any person. So everything real has latency, seed, in itself, an endless store of real apprehension. Your apprehension is real. An endless store, it's infinite, that people may learn to know. Everything is in there. Like that statement says everything. If you have eyes to see, everything that is real, that is able to be perceived or known, has endless store of real apprehensions. What does that mean about a one-to-one correspondence theory of a text? I don't know how I can explain this any better. Your body is the memory of your attention. You pay attention to what is meaningful to you and to what you value, to what awakens meaning in you, to what resonates with you that is outside of you. The deep calls to the deep, and that's what you value, and that's your meaning, and that's where you put your attention, and then you act as if that is meaningful because you have to, because that's what you're paying attention to. You don't act in accordance to what you don't pay attention to. If you're paying attention to this and you're not paying attention to that, you're acting in accordance with this, because you can't act according to this because you're not paying attention to it. And then your body is the memory of that. So if you pay attention to eating well and exercise and getting good sleep, the memory of that is that your body is healthy. This is so basic. This is so obvious and basic that we suppress the truth and unrighteousness, and we don't know that we understand these things. I think of this stuff in terms of like PBK will talk about spirits and how different patterns move a spirit. So like TLC, why are we all participating in this TLC? Well, because we are something about it that we try to name and that we try to put language on often, because we'll talk about the navel gazing, is we are all paying attention to this because something that is happening within this, some spirit, some pattern is resonating with us, which is why we are paying attention to it. And if it wasn't resonating with us, if there was no resonance, we wouldn't pay attention to it, because we wouldn't care, because we wouldn't value it, because it wouldn't mean anything.
Yeah, that reminds me of the what I was editing. Actually, I was just editing the one of McMo's recent streams where Neil and Kale Zeldin were talking about friendship and like the role of friendship, and the ecclesial, filial. He kind of was using the monastery as like example of friendship being kind of the purpose of the communion of saints.
Gathers around him like-minded dudes who want to do this thing. They want to live. And so it starts in that. So the monastery, the model of the monastery is it's supposed to be an ordered friendship.
In person as well. I don't know. That's what came to mind as, something about TLC that catches our attention. And I'm not trying to make categorical statements. What I'm trying to say is that there is a massive difference between how easily we can access these types of things through different mediums, such that when we are face to face, or when we do TLC video talks like this, that ability to resonate at the personal level is much more available to us. Because the ever present meaning is just pouring through you, through your your intonation and your body language and stuff.
The fullness of your consciousness, which includes your pre-conscious awareness.
We find ourselves in this environment already of where we resonate with each other's meaning. It's pre-propositional or something like that, and it's participation. It's that when I am with you and I can see you, I inevitably participate in your meaning. Essentially, I see what you mean.
Yeah, where two or more gathered.
Yeah.
So like even this with Clara. She says we can't resonate with the text, but we can somehow resonate online. That's odd. I actually think you can resonate. I wouldn't say you can't resonate with a text because there's no meaning in the text. You can resonate with a person via the medium of the text.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here. It's just a technology.
I think that's
we're using this technology to resonate.
Yeah, and I think some technologies are better at this than others, and some leave massive gaps that make it very easy to be like, oh, I know what that person means because I read the text.
Yeah.
Is this a T-Grog colonized stream or
not completely. We're bringing him up because he's part of the multiplicity.
We're talking about Job.
Also, it's a Jess colonized stream.
Kinda. Jess is definitely colonized.
It's a mosaic vision. It's a mosaic vision of colonization.
My question is, if we can't use YouTube for TLC, where do we go?
I think that's an
interesting question.
Because to me, YouTube has been this vehicle by which, so at our estuary meeting on Sunday, we had one of the guys came and he, I think, was born in Germany and remembered as a child going to the market with his grandma and how his grandma knew the butcher and the baker and all of this, and talked about how American urban planning means that we don't know each other. And then I was thinking about the fact that what Americans do is that they create community over these other platforms. Like, when I was young, it was set, because you would go to school and the communion that you enjoyed was over watching Happy Days or whatever was on TV.
Sports,
yeah. And now we're having this communion over social media, so it's a globalized communion, and again, Vervaeke and Peugeot both say, I'm not trying to start a community. And it's like, I am trying to start a community. And so then, I look at what Grim Grizz does and I look at what Chad does. And then it's like, you're taking Luke down. And it's, the fact is that the institutions are getting machine-like in this too. So I don't know. We're not going anywhere right now.
I'm also reminded of I think it was after the Symbolic World conference, people were talking on a stream, and one of the reflections that I heard was about how perhaps we should consider the virtual space as more of like a sharing the word and
making the transition. That's what I'm thinking about now. Is like as great as it is seeing you guys and talking with you, we're back on screens again. It's not the same as the conference. This isn't good. Cameron talked about how everyone was just the same in person. I really picked up on how uncannily different people were just in 3 dimensions and huggable. I can't hug you right now.
Cormac, you are a really good hugger.
Thank you. Getting back into the grind of things, I've been reeling all week, trying to be productive again. It's hard, and then how to build on the relationships that were formed from people I first met, and it's something I'm working on, and I'm wondering what your guys' insight is into that.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. It's hard, making these new friendships and then realizing it's probably going to be a while before we actually see each other in person. I know some of you are a little closer to me, Cormac's a few hours from me, so definitely possible to see him, but some of you are in, the UK or in Canada or on the other side of the country like Derek, and it's awesome building these new relationships and starting, new in real life friendships, but then knowing that it's going to be quite a bit of time before you actually get to share
context
space again.
It's
quite difficult, and like Cormac said, these digital mediums are a bit of a band-aid, but there's certainly no replacement for actually getting to be with people, to hug them, to shake their hand, to speak with them. So in one sense it's a little bittersweet going and meeting up with each other, but then having to leave one another again, it's quite painful actually.
Yeah,
I think for a lot of people at this stage, the challenge is more to share it with others and find ways for this to help others, more so than us understanding it more. I think lots of us get it at this stage, and there's always more you can learn, but we get diminishing returns, of course. And at a certain point, the challenge is more how to share what we have with others, more so than growing ourselves. And I see us all as like working on this in parallel. And there's some of this we do online, like we can write articles and talk to each other and do research and so on, but I think a lot of it is we have to all like run our local experiments and attempts at sharing and helping people grow together. So I think a lot of the interactions we will have over the last few years online are going to be about how does this land in practice in your community? Is there stuff I can learn from that to help with my community and vice versa? So I feel like we're just getting back to work in a way. Like the summit was a great social event for us, something we loved and getting back together, but I feel like we have to get back to real life and work.
Stop crying. It won't do any good. And anyway, you have a lot of work to do starting right now.
It's the gift of tears. The tears for me are often they're like a pointer to like, okay, you're in a true spot.
My title is Redeeming Work on techne, which is the Greek word for art, skill, craft, so at the root of work, on techne as an encounter between God, man, and the world.
More of like sharing the word and stuff, and then like really, this is a long conversation that many people have had about like prioritizing in person, meeting up in person, because for example, the anadromist, I think it was in your conversation with him, PVK, actually mentioned how
she came here. She met one of my very fascinating Russian puppeteer friends here. And so she wanted to keep in touch. So they exchanged email addresses and she sent her stuff. And then here's nothing back. And this friend came over a little bit later and I said, you don't write back, do you? And she goes, no. I said, it's because in the Soviet Union, all communication, all letters was monitored. And so people got out of the habit of, it's only about the in-person discussion. And the only reason you use the internet is to say, I'm coming into town or I'm leaving town or I'll be over soon. And she goes, you understand exactly. And the George, which is so hard for my American friend in Berlin to understand. Because for her, it's just like keeping up. You want to keep up with people on a regular basis, and they just don't do that. You know, the internet for them is not a place where you do little chit chat between people. And, you know, how are you this week or something? I think the idea of a Christmas card with people's faces on it once a year would just drive them insane. But also, the benches aren't like this. They put the benches so they're not far from each other and facing each other. And then the teenagers here, who all have phones, they talk into the night while they're smoking, because so many Georgian teenagers smoke. And I just had an interesting conversation with a guy, Mark Jackson. At one point he said, people need to go back to smoking. And I said, I understand what you mean, because maybe it's healthier to smoke and talk than it is to simply be scrolling through your phone all the time. Because on a human level, you might die earlier, but at least you will have had human conversations before you die.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, what a radical thing that would be to say in California.
Oh, yeah.
Where all the smokers are exiles and they keep getting pushed further and further from the building.
Yeah, and I don't like smoking at all myself. I don't mind smoking at all myself. But when I see the teenagers outside talking to each other and not texting people far away, I say that is a healthier thing, because what we're doing in the virtual world is really doing things to us. We're conducting a global experiment upon ourselves.
One of the places that I see some of the most talking face-to-face culture here in Sacramento is among the homeless.
They don't want to use the technology for these types of things because they know that the powers that be will, you know, like basically be messing with them. And it's like, I don't know, maybe we should, instead of doing, when we do jokes and they get removed by the machine, you know, maybe that should be expected. We should save the joking for in-person or private calls and stuff. You know, I don't know. There's an interesting thing with the public facing private and then virtual in-person. It's also like the safetyism thing, like you were saying, Luke, you know, it's like, yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
I would also say like I've tried to point to this, but every space has its purpose and use and value. Yeah. And it's like, especially as a comedian, it's so funny because like if I'm in church with a bunch of church ladies, just raising an eyebrow or just being like, will like get a huge like, oh, he's doing with me something ironic or funny or like he's being silly, oh, and you get the big church woman like, but if I am around comedians, I have to say like the most like, you have to rip the veil off. You have to like, they already know all the subtext.
Steiner has this interesting idea that the word that creates has a gestural element to it, a physical movement element to it, as well as a phonetic element to it. So that when God uses the word to create man out of the clay, that he's acting like a kind of like a sculptor almost.
The word in Hebrew is a word for someone who is a potter. It's
right.
What is it? Yatsar, like to form in the clay.